Kyoto, 1623. A young samurai stood before his master holding 7 different weapons: sword, spear, bow, staff, chain, dagger, rope dart. He could use them all. He was skilled at everything. His master looked at him and said just 3 words: "You are worthless." The student was devastated. "Master, I've trained in 7 disciplines. How am I worthless?" "Because you are mediocre at 7 things. The warrior who masters 1 technique can defeat the warrior who knows 1,000. You have scattered your spirit across 7 weapons. It lives in none of them. This is the paradox nobody tells you. The more you learn, the less you master. The more skills you collect, the weaker you become. While modern culture screams, learn everything, be everywhere, master all skills, the ancient warriors knew a different truth. Depth defeats breadth, always. The question isn't how many things can you do. The question is, can you do 1 thing so deeply that it becomes you? Chapter 1. The Awakening. The year is 1623. Oithridan. The Tokugawa shogunate has brought peace to Japan. For the first time in generations, samurai are not dying in battle. Instead, they're competing in dojos, collecting techniques from every master, every school. Yuto embodied this perfectly. 22 years old, 15 years of training. He could demonstrate 17 sword techniques from 3 different schools, 12 spear forms, 9 archery stances. His knowledge was vast, his demonstrations impressive, but he had one problem. He kept losing. Students with half his knowledge defeated him consistently, not because they were faster or stronger, because their techniques lived in their bodies. His lived in his head. During sparring, Yuto's mind raced. Should I use the shinkage counter or the kage deflection? What about the Ito thrust? And while he was thinking, the strike would land. He knew 17 techniques. In combat, he couldn't access any of them naturally. The whispers started. Yuto knows everything, but can do nothing. He's a library, not a warrior. One evening after a humiliating loss, defeated in 10 seconds by a student who knew only 3 techniques, Yuto approached his master. Master Takeda sat in seiza before the dojo shrine, eyes closed. Yuto knelt and waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Finally, Takeda opened his eyes. "Master," Yuto said, voice trembling, "I need to learn more. I keep losing to students who know less. Perhaps if I studied with the Ito Ryu master in Edo, or—" "Stop." The word landed like a hammer. "Stand up. Show me your favorite technique." Yuto demonstrated a complex combination. Overhead feint, spinning cut, ending in thrust. Technically perfect. Textbook execution. Takeda watched in silence. Again. 10 times, each repetition identical. "Sit." They faced each other. That technique does not live in you. It lives in your memory. You're performing it, not being it. When you execute that combination, how many decisions are you making? The feint angle, the spin timing, the thrust depth. Wrong. A true technique requires 0 decisions. You are thinking your way through motions. That is why you lose. How many techniques do you know, Yuto? Perhaps 60 across all weapons. And how many can you execute without thinking? Silence. None, Master. Exactly. You have collected 60 techniques like a merchant collects coins. They sit in your mind doing nothing. You are not a warrior. You are a museum." The words shattered something inside Yuto. Tomorrow, we begin again. Not learning more, learning less, much less. That night, Yuto sat alone, staring at moonlight. 15 years of training, 60 techniques, and he was worthless. As dawn broke, he made a decision. Whatever his master asked, he would do, even if it meant abandoning everything he'd learned. Chapter 2. The Principle. The next morning, Master Takeda announced, "Today, no weapons training. Today, we practice stepping." For 3 hours, they practiced one thing, stepping forward. Right foot, weight transfer, left foot follows, over and over. Yuto's mind rebelled. "This is too basic. I've been training 15 years and we're practicing walking?" Then he noticed something. The master stepped differently. Each step was complete, fully present. There was a quality that transformed the simple act into something almost sacred. After training, the master called Yuto to the meditation hall. A single scroll hung on the wall, 4 characters in elegant calligraphy. "Ichigyo Zammai," the master said. "One practice Samadhi. Do you know what this means? To focus on one thing? Deeper, sit." They sat in Seiza. Ichigyo Zammai is not just about practicing one thing. It's about understanding that there is only one thing, not one technique, one source. All techniques come from the same place. All mastery comes from the same depth. When you practice 7 weapons, you think you're learning 7 different skills. You're not. You're learning one skill badly 7 times. Yuto leaned forward. The warrior who practices one downward cut 10,000 times is not just learning that cut. He's learning presence. He's learning to let technique move through him without thought. He's learning to become the cut itself. And once you learn to become one thing completely, you can become anything completely. The master stood, touched the scroll. This principle terrifies modern people. They think, if I only practice one thing, I'll be limited. The opposite is true. The person who practices 7 things shallowly has 7 shallow skills. The person who practices one thing deeply has infinite depth. He turned back to Yuto. "Tell me, when you're sparring, where is your mind?" "Everywhere, master. I'm thinking about which technique to use, what school, what counter." "Stop. You are never actually present. You practice sword while thinking about spear. You practice spear while thinking about archery. You are never fully anywhere. This scattered attention is why you lose." The samurai's greatest weapon is not the variety of techniques he knows. It is his ability to become the technique itself, to move without deciding, to respond without thinking. Miyamoto Musashi won 60 duels. He had one principle, applied infinitely. He wrote, "Do nothing which is of no use. Stop collecting, stop learning, start deepening." The master's voice became firm. "Starting tomorrow, you will practice one technique, one single downward cut, nothing else, for 1 year." Yuto's eyes widened. "But master, I already know." "You know how to move your sword downward. You do not know how to cut. There is a difference. The first is motion. The second is presence." That night, Yuto began. He stood alone, sword raised, and made one downward cut, then another. By the 100th cut, his mind screamed, "This is pointless. This is beginner work." But he continued, because the master had given him a path. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done. If you're beginning to understand how single focus could transform your mastery, join this community. Subscribe and walk this path with us as we explore the ancient warrior wisdom that builds modern excellence. Chapter 3. The Test. Month 1. The Rebellion. Every morning, Yuto entered the training hall and made the same downward cut, 1,000 times before breakfast. His mind rebelled violently. This is stupid. Other students are learning new techniques while I'm repeating basics. What is this teaching me? The whispers grew. Master Takeda broke Yuto. He's doing beginner exercises now. But Takeda watched silently, said nothing, waited. Week 5, the first glimpse. During his 500th cut one morning, Yuto's exhausted mind finally quieted. He wasn't thinking anymore. He was just cutting. For exactly 3 seconds, the sword moved without him deciding. His body executed before his mind gave command. The moment passed. His analytical mind rushed back, but now he knew there was something beneath technique, a place where motion happened without decision. He had tasted Mushin for 3 seconds, and now he hungered for more. Month 2, the deepening Yuto stopped resisting. 1,000 cuts, morning and evening, just cutting, no analysis, just presence. And he began noticing infinite layers. The grip, too tight, the blade moved rigidly, too loose, it lacked power. There was a precise pressure where the sword became an extension. The breath. Breathing out during the cut increased power. Holding breath created tension. The weight. The sword didn't need force. Gravity did most of the work. His job was to guide, not push. The stillness before the cut. Perfect stillness. The more still before movement, the more explosive the movement. He was learning that one technique contained infinite depth. He'd never seen it because he'd been too busy collecting more. Month 3, the real test master. Takeda announced sparring, full contact. All students participate. Yuto's stomach tightened. 3 months of only downward cuts, no combinations, no counters. He would fight with one technique against students who knew dozens. First match versus Kenji, who knew 12 techniques from 2 schools. They bowed, assumed stance. Kenji attacked immediately. Complex combination, feint high, strike low, follow with thrust. Old Yuto would have been thinking, should I counter with shinkage or cage or... New Yuto didn't think at all. His body responded. One downward cut, not as defense, just cutting, because that's what his body knew completely. The cut intercepted Kenji's attack at the exact moment, exact angle, not from thinking, from being. Match over in 4 seconds. Silence in the dojo. Second match versus Hiroshi, who knew 17 techniques. Same result, 6 seconds. By the 5th match, no one wanted to face Yuto. Master Takeda addressed everyone. What you witnessed is Ichigyo Zammai. Yuto knows one technique with his entire being. Hiroshi knows 17 with his mind. When Hiroshi attacks, he's thinking about 17 options. While he's thinking, Yuto is cutting. The warrior with one technique executed with complete presence defeats the warrior with 1,000 techniques, executed with scattered attention. Always. That evening, Yuto sat processing. 3 months ago, he knew 60 techniques. Now he knew 1, and he was more effective than ever. The paradox was resolving. Depth wasn't limitation, it was power. Chapter 4. Warrior Psychology. Before we continue Yuto's story, let's understand what was actually happening in his brain. Modern neuroscience has discovered what the samurai knew 400 years ago. Single-point focus physically changes your brain in ways scattered attention never can. When Yuto practiced one cut 3,000 times daily, he engaged in deep practice. This is fundamentally different from shallow practice. Shallow practice, learning many things briefly, creates weak neural pathways. Deep practice, learning one thing intensively, creates thick, myelin-wrapped highways. Information travels faster. Execution becomes automatic. Studies show the same pattern. 10,000 hours of deliberate practice on one skill creates mastery. The 10,000 hours spread across 10 skills never can. When Yuto executed that cut without thinking, his prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, wasn't involved. The motor cortex had been trained so thoroughly, it bypassed conscious decision entirely. This is Mushin, no mind, not because the mind disappears, but because the trained body no longer needs the thinking mind. Miyamoto Musashi understood this completely. Modern people think he mastered many techniques. Wrong. He mastered one principle, applied infinitely. In the Book of 5 Rings, he wrote, "Do not practice many things shallowly. Practice one thing deeply." Musashi won 60 duels, many to the death, never losing. His secret wasn't variety, it was depth. He could respond to any attack because his body understood principle so deeply that adaptation was automatic. Master Takeda's wisdom is supported by what psychologists call the paradox of choice. When you have many options, you experience choice paralysis. Your brain evaluates each option. This takes time. In combat, that time is death. When you have one option practiced to perfection, there is no evaluation, only response. The absence of choice becomes speed. When Yuto practiced one cut for 3 months, he wasn't just learning that cut. He was learning how to maintain attention, stay present with repetition, notice infinite subtlety, let action happen without interference, trust body over mind. These lessons transfer. The person who masters one thing deeply has learned how to master. They can apply that depth to anything. The person who practices 10 things shallowly has learned how to skim. They apply that skimming to everything. The samurai weren't mystical, they were practical. Depth saves lives. Breadth gets you killed. If this journey is resonating with you, if you're ready to learn the practices that create unshakable mastery, subscribe. We're building a community who choose depth over breadth, mastery over accumulation. Chapter 5. The First Transformation. 6 months into training one cut, Yuto was transformed. Not just in skill, in being. The cut had become him. Then came the challenge. A ronin named Katsuro had been defeating dojos across Kyoto. 23 dojos, 0 losses. His approach, study under 7 masters, learn techniques from every major school, overwhelm opponents with unpredictability. When he challenged Takeda's dojo, the master announced, "Yuto will represent us." The students gasped. Yuto trained only one technique. Katsuro knew hundreds. Arashiyama Bamboo Grove, neutral ground, witnessed by multiple schools. Katsuro arrived with swagger, 3 different swords strapped to his back. Yuto arrived with 1 bokken. They faced each other, bowed. "I've heard about you," Katsuro said loudly. "The student who forgot everything to practice basics. This will be educational." Yuto said nothing, just settled into stance, sword raised overhead, the same position he'd held 10,000 times. Katsuro smiled. "You're advertising your only technique? I can counter that before you even—" The duel began. Katsuro attacked first. Complex combination, feint with tanto, draw katana mid-motion, strike from unexpected angle. Brilliant, unpredictable. Exactly what had defeated 23 dojos. But Yuto didn't respond to the complexity. He responded to the moment. His cut descended, not countering the technique, just cutting, because cutting was what his body knew completely. The cut intersected Katsuro's complex motion at the exact moment of transition, the microsecond between feint and draw, where balance shifts. Katsuro's entire combination collapsed. Yuto's bokken stopped at his throat. 4 seconds. Silence in the bamboo grove. "How?" Katsuro whispered. "I used 7 different schools. You just cut." "I didn't see the opening," Yuto said quietly. "My body found it, because my body knows one thing completely. Your mind was thinking about 7 techniques. My body was being one technique." Master Takeda stepped forward. "What you witnessed is not one technique defeating 200. It's presence defeating distraction." Katsuro's mind made dozens of decisions during that attack. Each decision took microseconds. Yuto's mind made 0 decisions. No decisions mean no delay. He looked at Katsuro directly. "You're skilled, truly. But versatility without depth is elaborate confusion. You know many things. You are none of them. This student knows one thing. He is that thing." Katsuro stood silent, then bowed deeply to Yuto. "Teach me." Yuto smiled. "The path is simple. Choose one thing. Practice it until self and practice disappear. Until you stop doing the technique and become the technique." "How long?" "As long as it takes. Maybe 6 months, maybe 6 years. It depends on your willingness to abandon everything else." Chapter 6. Deep Training Arc. 3 days later, Yuto walked mountain paths alone, following Master Takeda's instructions. "There's a monastery. Zen monks who have studied the warrior's way without weapons. Go. Stay 3 months." After 2 days, he reached Shorinji Temple. Master Hakuin greeted him. "Master Takeda says you've learned to master 1 technique. Good. Here you'll learn to master 0 techniques." "0, Master?" "Yes. You've spent 6 months becoming the cut. Now you'll spend 3 months becoming nothing. The schedule: 6 hours of Zazen meditation daily. Simple work, no sword practice, no technique training, just sitting, just being, just presence without object. Week 1, resistance. The first week was excruciating. Sitting for 6 hours with no activity felt like torture. His mind screamed, "This is pointless. I should be training." Master Hakuin would strike his shoulder with a stick when he saw restlessness. "You learn to focus mind on 1 technique. Now learn to focus mind on no technique, on pure presence itself." Week 3, the glimpse. During morning meditation, Yuto's chattering thoughts suddenly stopped. Not forcefully, they just ceased. In the absence of thought, he felt something he'd never experienced. A presence beneath all thinking, beneath all technique, beneath all doing. The awareness that witnesses all action without being defined by any action. He sat in that space for 20 seconds. Then his analytical mind rushed back, and it vanished. But now he'd tasted it, the source beneath technique. Month 2, the teaching master. Hakuin called Yuto to his chambers. You've discovered the space beneath technique. Now I'll explain why this matters. You spent 6 months mastering one cut, but who was executing that cut? I was, master. Wrong. Your body was. But you, the aware presence, was identified with the body's actions. The highest warrior doesn't execute technique. Technique executes itself. Awareness simply witnesses. Hakuin demonstrated with his walking stick. He moved it through space utterly without effort. When I move this stick, am I moving it? Or is movement happening, and I'm simply not interfering? The question broke something open in Yuto's understanding. Month 3, integration. The monks introduced martial response training. One monk would attack unexpectedly during daily activities. The other must respond without thinking, without technique, without preparation. First time Yuto was attacked while sweeping, he stumbled. His mind tried to choose a response, and the moment passed. Too slow. Your mind creates the delay. Drop the mind. After weeks of practice, Yuto learned to respond without mental involvement. His body would move, not from learned technique, but from pure presence. Action happened without an actor. On his last day, Master Hakuin said, "You came having mastered one cut. You return having mastered no cuts." These are the same thing. One cut practiced 10,000 times becomes no cut. The technique disappears into principle. The self disappears into action. Return to your dojo. But remember, the one cut you perfected is now no cut. You carry nothing. You are nothing. And because you are nothing, you can be everything the moment requires. Chapter 7, the final confrontation. Yuto returned after 3 months. Master Takeda greeted him with knowing eyes. "You've learned?" "Yes, Master." "Good. Because your final test is here." A famous sword master from Edo, Yamada Ichiro, was challenging dojos across Kyoto. 40 years of training, 12 schools mastered, over 100 opponents defeated. "Yuto will accept the challenge," Takeda announced. The dual Yamada arrived with ceremony. 60 years old, carrying himself with absolute authority. They faced each other. Real katana. First blood ends the match. Yamada studied Yuto's stance. "You're young, maybe 25? I've trained longer than you've been alive. I've studied under 12 masters. I know 300 techniques." Yuto said nothing, just stood present. Something in Yuto's stillness unsettled Yamada. The young man's eyes weren't showing fear or confidence or anything, just presence, like looking at a mirror. They bowed. Drew swords. Yamada attacked first, full power. A combination from Ito Ryu school, one of the most sophisticated techniques in Japanese swordsmanship. Yuto's body simply moved. One downward cut. The cut found the space between Yamada's elaborate combination, the microsecond where transition created opening. Yamada's attack collapsed. Yuto's blade stopped at his throat. 4 seconds. Yamada stepped back, shocked. He tried a different school. Shinkaji Ryu. Same result. 3rd school. 4th, 5th. Each time, the same. His elaborate techniques, perfected over decades, dissolved against one simple cut executed with complete presence. By the seventh exchange, Yamada was breathing hard. Everything he'd built his identity on, his 12 schools, his 300 techniques, his 40 years, was proving useless. Stop. Yamada lowered his sword. I don't understand. I'm using techniques that took years to master. You're using a cut that beginners learn in their first week. Because I'm not using a technique, Master. I'm being present. Technique is memory. Presence is now. Memory is always slow. Now is instant. But I have 40 years of experience. Yes, 40 years of accumulated knowledge. I have 9 months of depth. Your mind is full. Mine is empty. Fullness creates hesitation. Emptiness creates response. Master Takeda stepped forward. Yamada-san, you've climbed the mountain of technique to its peak, and at the peak, you've discovered that technique is the obstacle. This student has learned what you have yet to learn. The greatest warrior carries nothing, just pure presence that responds without past, without memory, without choice. Yamada knelt, bowed his head. I've been wrong for 40 years. I've been collecting when I should have been releasing. He looked at Yuto. Can you teach me? There's nothing to teach, only something to release. Your 12 schools are not wrong. They're just too much. Choose one. Practice it until you and it disappear. Which one? Doesn't matter. The school is irrelevant. The depth is everything. Yuto runs his own dojo now, not teaching techniques, teaching depth. A new student arrives, young, talented, carrying 5 weapons. Welcome, Yuto says. How many techniques do you know? The young man lights up. 73 across 6 weapons, Master. Stop. How many can you execute without thinking? Silence. None, Master. Exactly. You're carrying 73 techniques like stones. They weigh you down. Choose one technique, your favorite. We'll practice it. Only it, for 1 year. The young man's face falls. But Master, I came here to learn advanced techniques, and you will learn the most powerful method of all, depth. The warrior who masters one technique defeats the warrior who knows 1,000. Always. He places his hand on the young man's shoulder. This path goes against everything modern culture teaches. Culture says, learn more, expand, become versatile. Culture is wrong. Culture is why people master nothing. I'll teach you what the greatest warriors discovered. The depth you reach in one thing is more valuable than the breadth you reach in everything. One technique, practiced until you and the technique disappear. The young man looks uncertain but intrigued. Where do I begin? Right now, choose one technique, just one. The rest, we leave behind. The student chooses. A basic forward thrust. Yuto nods. Perfect. For the next year, this thrust becomes your entire world. Until you understand that one technique practiced infinitely is all techniques. And after 1 year, you might discover what I discovered. One is enough. One is everything. One is all you ever needed. The path of the warrior isn't about accumulation. It's about dissolution. Not learning more. Learning less. Not becoming versatile. Becoming deep. Not adding techniques. Removing distractions. The modern world drowns you in options, and the more you collect, the more paralyzed you become. Breadth creates choice. Choice creates hesitation. Hesitation creates failure. Depth creates certainty. Certainty creates speed. Speed creates mastery. This is Ichigyo Zammai. One practice, Samadhi, the discipline that transforms scattered effort into focused power. Not just in martial arts, in everything. Choose one thing, only one. Practice it until the boundary between you and it disappears. Until there's no doer, only doing. That depth you reach in one thing, it transfers to everything. Because you're not just learning a skill, you're learning how to go deep. The warrior who masters one cut can master anything, because he's mastered depth itself. If you're ready to walk the path of focused mastery in a world of scattered attention, join us. Subscribe. Not as entertainment, as practice. One practice, infinite depth, everything you need. See you in the next lesson, warrior.